they've had a defensive coordinator leave to go to Kentucky. I mean, I think all these guys are still going to coach A&M throughout the playoff, but it does cause – you remember famously Nick Saban just got sick of Lane Kiffin trying to do two jobs and told him to get on out of here, right about 5 days before they were going to play in the college football playoff a few years ago. That's been several years ago now. How does that seem to be working with the Aggies? And, I mean, has it been fairly business as normal? Like how and do you kind of feel like they have the infrastructure and enough coaches there to accommodate all this kind of weirdness that's going on with the staff at a time when you need everybody to be locked in?
Yeah, I mean, from all indications, it seems like everything is business as usual. And part of that, I think that it helps is that they've, with Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator, leaving to go to Kansas State, with Jay Bateman going to leave and go take over as the defensive coordinator at Kentucky. They already have named their successors and two guys from within the program, with Holman Wiggins taking over at offensive coordinator and Lyle Hemphill taking over at defensive coordinator. And so I think that there is probably help that there's a little continuity there, that if there's two guys who know the system, who have been there the entire season to help them implement this system that is one. And so if there was the case that Colin Klein or that Jay Bateman was tied up with something else, that there is that guy there that knows the system and is going to be the guy moving forward. And so I certainly think that helps, but there seems to be no indication that any of these guys have their eyes on the next horizon. I think they're all still pretty locked in. We actually it was interesting. We got to talk to the coordinators on Tuesday as part of, the bowl availability or excuse me, the playoff availability. And we were kind of curious before, are they going to give us Klein and Bateman? Or are they going to give us Wiggins and Lyle Hemphill to talk to? And it was the guys who have been the coordinators all year this year who are moving on. So seems like the eye's still on the prize around here.
All right, and everybody's looking to see – Le'Veon Moss has been out since – I was at that last game I think you played in. I think it was at Florida game back in October. A&M has been blessed to have Reuben Owens, E.J. Smith, Morrow is a name that comes to mind. So they're pretty deep at that position. We now have these availability reports, which are interesting because, again, we've been lied to for so long. I'm sure you're like me. You don't see an availability report and go, oh, that's just, everything on there is true. But they do have to at least share some of that. And again, this linebacker's been out for a long time for A&M as well, talking about Scooby Williams, that is, and then safety Bryce Anderson. And man, some of these guys have been out for a while. Scooby Williams was a big-time player for A&M, and yet his backup came in and has played brilliantly, so they didn't miss him as much. I'm just curious, like, Le'Veon Moss is a big-time home run threat, probably the best NFL prospect of the A&M running backs. Like, you've seen footage and the portions of practice you get to see. I forget exactly how that works at the college level, but the footage we've seen is he's moving pretty well. What's your gut telling you on his availability, and how big could that be if he's able to step in and come back in this offense?
I certainly think he's going to take snaps because, Mike Elko's party line on this the entire time has been they're in a wait and see mode with him, and he came out as questionable on the first availability report. But when we talked to Colin Klein, kind of asked him what would having Le'Veon Moss be to this offense, he did say twice something to the extent of he's really glad that Le'Veon is going to get to kind of finish out his career the way he wants to. And I don't think any player wants to finish out their career on the sidelines nursing an injury. So I do think he'll see some action. Now, how much of that he'll see, I think that's still left to be determined if he is not back up to 100%. But even when Le'Veon suffered the injury against Florida in early October, the timetable then, and then as we kind of continued to ask about it moving forward, was always he there's a good chance he could be back by the end of the regular season, but he would be available if A&M made a postseason run. He wasn't available at Texas. And so I think if they're sticking to what they said in that timetable early, he should be available. But the other part of that too is they've been pretty good at running the ball without him since, the beginning of conference play with Ruben Owens, Jamarian Morrow, Amari Daniels, EJ Smith. Would it be a huge boost to have him back? Sure, it certainly would. But I think that they can beat plenty of teams with the guys they have behind Le'Veon as well.
I think teams are going to end up studying like what Signetti has done at Indiana in the portal, what the Aggies have done with some of their portal players. I mean, Cassius Howell is winning all these awards. He's up for the top defensive player in the country. And I know the Tech linebacker won one of those. That might have been the Nagurski I'm thinking of. But Cassius Howell has emerged as maybe the best pass rusher in the country. It is, and you've done really good stories, and you've looked at these backgrounds, isn't it? It's wild, Travis. I think sometimes we get caught up in this. Oh my gosh, somebody from Miami or Florida State or somebody big or Penn State's out there in the portal. A&M finds this incredible player 2 years ago from Bowling Green. And I think he was very productive there, but I think it reminds us all that, and then even with Craver in Concepcion, I think Concepcion of those players was the biggest headliner at NC State because he actually did put up good numbers there. Craver's numbers did not suggest that he was just going to go crazy like he did early this season. What have you learned from sort of watching A&M and how they approach the portal? And because this year has been just a huge breakthrough year from the Aggies, but I bet they've learned a lot that'll help them moving forward.
Yeah, A&M has not been shy about going after guys that maybe have potential but don't have the numbers or have the numbers at a lower level. I mean, you even go back to the year prior when they brought in Nick Scorton from Purdue, the Bryan native. There was a big story about the fact that when Mike Elko was the defensive coordinator at A&M here and Scorton was coming out of Bryan, they didn't offer him. They weren't interested at the time. They didn't think he would turn into what he was. And Mike Elko said that the pitch coming back started with, "Hey, I'm sorry we didn't see this, but you've gone out and really proved yourself." And at that time, he led the Big Ten in sacks, and he apologized. And I think that's an interesting piece to all of that. Now they came around the next year, or really the same year, and got Cassius Howell from Bowling Green. Cassius Howell, talked plenty about the fact that he wasn't highly recruited out of high school. Part of that was it was in that kind of pandemic-y era. And their visits and things like that weren't necessarily happening. But he said he saw lots of guys that were getting recruited around him. And he thought and he believed that he was better than those guys and should have gotten some of the offers that those guys got. So he kind of used that as the chip to work his way through Bowling Green, and then found his place at A&M. And even when he got recruited by A&M, Mike Elko said recently that they thought he was an overlooked guy at that time. Craver was an interesting piece because they've said that the reason they really went after Craver is Mike Elko went to his defensive backs, especially cornerback Will Lee, and was like, who's the hardest guy? Who's the guy who was the hardest to cover this year? And Will Lee said it was Mario Craver. And when Mario Craver came in the transfer portal, they took Will Lee at his word and went after him. So it's kind of there was several different methods at which they kind of went around locating and finding and of course they have these huge staffs of scouts and recruiting analysts who are digging through the tape, and it certainly isn't probably as simple as that, but at least anecdotally several different ways to go about kind of locating and honing in on the guys that should go in the portal. And most all of them hit this year, and I think that is a testament to in the past it was how many guys in your recruiting class can you get to, how many 3 stars and 4 stars can you get to hit? Now it's how many guys from the portal can you get to hit each year? And they had a really high rate this year.
Huge hit rate, and Texas Tech did as well. And some of these teams that are in the CFB are great in that area. Something you had on your Twitter feed earlier today, College Game Day in Norman tomorrow, and they're going to have as a as a guest picker, the Boz, and then at A&M, not to be outdone, the next morning, Johnny Manziel, the guest picker on game day. I would say you could argue that in the past 30 or 40 years, those are two of the biggest characters, the most colorful characters in the history of college football. And one of those guys owns a Heisman. So I think that's and I feel a little bit bad for Johnny. I feel like Johnny's been blamed for some of this Diego Pavia bad behavior. I think
I was about to throw in Diego. Yeah.
It's just, man, you follow all that. I mean, the guy acted like an idiot. He just isn't it funny how you can go in one weekend almost, you can go from, or one season, to like all that fun bravado is kind of funny and cool and everything. And then and then in one night, you can kind of ruin it all by just really going over the top. And I think that's what Diego Pavia, and maybe he was drunk or something, I don't know, but he acted like such an idiot that he got the whole country against him there for a little bit.
I like to say, he was calling out the Heisman voters there on his Instagram. I voted for him as my top vote, so I didn't take it personally.
You didn't think what he was calling effers or whatever he said. You didn't internalize that.
That's the other guys who didn't.
But now with Marcel and Beck, this is such an interesting quarterback matchup, because like if you say, okay, I think these teams are pretty even, and Vegas does. I mean, I think A&M's favored by 3 in this game. Beck, to me, then you ask the question, which quarterback do you trust the most? And you can make an argument either way, because while Beck, I guess, maybe has a little more experience, they both are, I think, tied for the lead in interceptions of the CFP quarterbacks. I think they've both thrown 10 interceptions, and Marcel's coming off a game where quite honestly, he was just not at his best when A&M needed him to be really good. How have you seen Marcel react to that game, and kind of where is the staff's, where do you think the team's confidence is in Marcel right now going into this game, knowing, hey, Miami has confidence issues in Carson Beck? It's not like these are two. I mean, at one point they were both Heisman candidates. In the end, I don't know if either one of them finished in the top 10.
Right. It was, I'm going to be curious to see how Marcel comes out in this game, because, when we talk about that end of the season, some of the hiccups they had with South Carolina and Texas, the South Carolina game was about the time that A&M started making they're kind of getting their marketing team involved to get that kind of Heisman push. And they were sending out the hashtag Marcel mode stuff, and they made a website, and the weight of that could have easily kind of started to mount on his shoulders. Well, Heisman's done. Now all that's left is just to win ball games. And I'm curious to see if maybe if in some of those miscues that he had in the first half of South Carolina and in the second half of the Texas game, if some of that was just kind of the enormity of that moment. And now that you just have to go out there and win a game, is it going to be less about style points and Heisman moments, and just about making sure being moving the ball down the field methodically? But you're right, Carson Beck, the biggest selling point he has is he's been in these big games. So I think I think that it is a really fascinating battle, because it's a guy who was really close to the top of college football in his position group, and then Georgia kind of said, yeah, but maybe we'll move on, and he moved on. And he's been able to have some mixed results this season. The other thing with Marcel is the fact that I think the A&M's offense is just a little bit more explosive. And so if he can hit some of those bigger pass plays, I think A&M ranks like 11th in explosive plays this year. Miami is like 40th. They play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage to move the ball down the field. If A&M can tap into a few of those explosive plays, that's going to be a huge advantage for him. But it all relies on Marcel being accurate with some of those deeper passes and making the right decisions.
All right. I want you to know I have downloaded the KBTX app. It's a nice app, and you can get all of Travis's. I mean, he's got tons of columns, reports, everything. Then, of course, he's on TV. You can see him in the background. And so I have taken a peek at that. I liked Albert Regis. I was looking at one of your reports on Twitter, and he said something about, we're the first team to make it to the playoffs for A&M, but we didn't do all this just to get that little 2 claps and a Ric Flair achievement. we want the win, and we want to keep winning till the season's over. Always amazed at how, like, a wrestler that was at his peak 25 to 30 years ago, that these kids know all about him, and he still has that much staying power. That Regis, the huge defensive tackle, I always like to see where the Regis family's sitting when I'm at the games. They're down there to get, the players' families are right down there close to the sideline, and you can always see, man, the Regis family. They got those jerseys. What is that, number 13? They got those
17, yeah.
17, sorry. And they are large and in charge down there, man.
Well, the funny thing is, he's kind of a little bit of an old soul. He has a daughter, and him and his fiance have a daughter. And for senior day, he ran out on the field holding his daughter, and kind of met the fiance at midfield and everything like that. And that video went viral. And so he was asked about that. And he said, I absolutely hated the fact that went viral. I don't want to go viral, but it was a special moment to be able to do that with my daughter. So he is a little bit of an old soul in that regards.
All right. And I could not talk to you without bringing up the other day. I was one of the millions. Apparently, the ratings came in, and it was one of the most watched volleyball matches probably of the last 10 years. I know Nebraska had an outdoor match that had like 80,000 fans, but the Mighty Aggies going in to the belly of the beast at the Bob Devaney Center or whatever it was, and taking down Nebraska. There have been some good Aggie upsets over the years, Travis, but that's one of the bigger in any sport. That sort of transcends all sports, because Nebraska that's what they do. I mean, that they are a volleyball school. What's been the reaction there on the campus? And I understand there was a pretty nice little gathering as they returned to campus the other night.
Yeah, and it was cold out. At least it was Texas cold out there. I was shivering a little bit, waiting for that bus to come around. But there was probably a few hundred people out there waiting for them to get back. It was pretty similar to the same crowd that was there for the baseball team when they returned from the College World Series after just falling short of a national title. So that kind of tells you where that program is and how much people cared about that match. Jamie Morrison is actually just a really fun coach to cover, because he absolutely does not give you the coach's cliches. He kind of just tells you what he's thinking. And, he mentioned that during the fourth set, the one that ended 37-35, A&M actually lost that set, which forced the fifth set. But he said cameras caught him smiling, and people are like, why were you smiling? That was such an intense set and everything. And he said, well, I was just thinking, this is a really good volleyball game. I don't care if we win or lose. I'm just gonna be really excited to get to go home and make a bowl of popcorn and watch this thing back. This is a really, really fun game to watch. It was a huge accomplishment for this program that a few years ago was floundering. And some of these girls who are seniors now were just part of a program that the coach ended up getting fired, and just kind of was a little bit rudderless, and now are a program that is filling up for sure the lower bowl of Reed Arena at most of their home games, kind of starting to get that Nebraska-like vibe. And a couple of good stories. You got Logan Lednicki, who's the opposite hitter, who is the third generation Aggie. Her father played for the football team, and so that's pretty well documented that she has grown up an Aggie and is doing this. And Kendall Stowers, former Baylor player who medically retired about a season and a half ago. And was sitting at home watching the Final Four with her mom last year. She decided that she didn't think that she thought she could still be healthy and play, and they worked with a ton of doctors to kind of reduce symptoms and do different kinds of therapies, and she was cleared. Jamie Morrison took a chance on her, and she finished as the high kill leader in the Nebraska game with 25. And so just a really remarkable story there. And the brother of Eli Stowers, who had his own kind of comeback story from not working out at A&M to now being the prime target for the Diego Pavia that we were talking about, the winner of the Mackey Award. Their family flew from College Station, or drove down to College Station from Denton, flew to Vegas for one award, flew to Nebraska for those games, then flew to New York for the Mackey Award, then came home for 2 days, and then are flying up to Kansas City to be there. So they've really gotten the frequent flyer miles this month.
Yeah, and believe me, Baylor, she loved Baylor, and Baylor loved Kendall Stowers, and the team doctor would not sign off on her coming back. So she got retired, even though she didn't want to retire, and Baylor never wanted to lose her. So kudos to the A&M team doctor and whoever decided to clear her. And just to rub salt in the wound, they kept mentioning that Helmuth, I think is her name, or something like that, and her mom played at Baylor. And so I asked the Baylor volleyball coach, I said, well, what's the deal? What's the story there? And he's like, well, we didn't recruit her because we had Kendall Stowers on the roster.
There you go.
So now you know the rest of the story. Travis, man, congrats on it's been a fun season of coverage for you. We enjoy watching you. My daughter will be right in the middle of all that game day activity, and so she's excited to get down there. And so we'll be watching, and it'll be a great weekend. And we'll see. Hopefully, you'll get to be in the Metroplex. If the Aggies win, you could be home for New Year's Eve and the whole celebration. So, man, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. And the mic.
We're to walk around the corner from game day to our Aggie playoff preview from KBTX. That'll be, the smaller crowd right behind the stage in Aggie Park. So if you're out there, you can come, hang out with us before the game. Who needs Pat McAfee when you can get Tyler Shaw? So that's the motto I live by.
I'll tell her, and she'll drop by, and so you can meet the youngest Mosley kid. All right, Travis, have a great one, and we'll look forward to reading everything and watching you after this game.
You got it. Thanks.
There he goes. Travis Brown, our Aggies insider.